Hey everybody, how's it going? So if you have Meniere's disease, you are probably used to a world of fluctuations. Now, when I was early on in Meniere's disease, my first ear was diagnosed, over 30 years ago, and my fluctuations happened maybe once or twice a year. And even when it happened, like when it started to misbehave, it was very minor. Things kind of sounded a little bit muffled. And I honestly think the only reason I noticed it is because I'm a musician and I am super, super hypersensitive to to how things sound. And honestly, that went on for, a good almost 30 years. I would have maybe one or two flare-ups a year. No vertigo. It's just things kind of sounded muffled in that ear. I noticed when I talk on the phone, people's voices kind of sounded a little bit lower in pitch. And so if you've been watching my channel, if you know my story, if not, I'll put the link up here. But I got hit pretty hard with Meniere's disease over the year 2023. In the course of just a little over a year, I actually ended up going bilateral. So it hit both of my ears. Now, what happens to a lot of people with Meniere's disease is those fluctuations become more frequent, and eventually to the point where that ear does not fluctuate anymore, it just flatlines. Now, again, please, I say this happens to many people, some people. You saw the disclaimer at the beginning of the video. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical expert. I just know from talking to people in the community that this is common and this happens. And that was certainly my story. I got more and more fluctuations. My left ear kept fluctuating until it just completely flatlined. And this was last spring of 2024, and that's what eventually qualified it for a cochlear implant. Now, when I qualified, my right ear was fluctuating a lot more, but it was still fluctuating. So I was still having days that were pretty okay. And so 2 days after surgery, my right ear, fluctuated down, but it fluctuated down hard. And I was like, okay, well, let's see, couple weeks, let's see if it trends back upwards. It's usually down, it's usually offline, for a couple weeks at the most. 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, a month goes by, and I'm like, I think it's gone. I seriously think it's flatlined. I was sad, but I wasn't surprised because it's like the same trajectory as the other ear. But it was funny, kind of, because during that month, I went through activation. And, for those 2 weeks, I was really deaf because I didn't have a CI. And even then, I was still learning. And so very quickly, I became very dependent and still am today now, obviously, on that CI. It really is the only way I can hear. So now the reality is if I take my hardware off, my processor off, I really am almost completely deaf. And it's scary to me that happened just within, under 2 years. Now, of course, on my CI side, the reason I'm completely deaf on that side just about is because the surgery, right? The surgery can and usually does destroy some of that natural hearing. But for me, that wasn't a big deal because it was already wrecked and distorted anyway. Now, I can hear on my second ear, I can hear like impact sounds that kind of peak around 65 decibels and 70 decibels. I've been kind of testing that on my dB meter on my watch. So like if I set a glass down hard on a counter, or if the shower's running or the hairdryer's running, I can hear those things. They're very distorted. I certainly can't understand speech unless you are like yelling right in my face and I'm trying to read your lips, and then I can kind of sort of maybe understand. So all that to say is, I went back to my audiologist. I had already been implanted, already been activated, and we went ahead and did an evaluation for my second ear. And my word score was really low. And honestly, I can't remember. It was way far beyond what I needed to qualify. So I now qualify to get a second implant. And it's just wild to me. Like, I'd never thought in a million years I would be in this spot, and here I am. So let's talk about reasons to maybe want a second implant. Maybe let's talk about some pros and cons. Now, at first, I heard a lot of people in the community say, I got one, I'm good, I can hear enough, I don't really know why I would need a second one. And I guess I kind of understand that mentality. But now that I am pretty much almost completely deaf in the other ear, I can now see some more benefits to why I might want to get a second one. So I kind of wanted to go over those. One of the first reasons I'm really wanting a second one is so I can hear in stereo. And not necessarily for music, we'll talk about that in a second, but really just for spatial awareness. What does kind of stink is, if someone's talking on the other side of my head where my CI isn't, where my processor isn't, they're away from the microphone, so I can't hear them. So I have to like turn my head, or I have to move around so that they're on the side where my mics are. They're really just for more spatial awareness. It would be nice to be able to hear in stereo. And here's another reason that I've actually heard people talk about that's actually a pretty good reason, is it would be nice to have a backup just in case. So like, we're dealing with the reality is that now we have hardware in our heads, and if something goes wrong, it's, it may not be an easy fix. It may require surgery. So if something should malfunction with the one on my left side, let's say it's offline for a while or something, it would be nice to have another one so I could at least still hear and communicate. Because right now, if it were to tank or something were to happen, I'd be out of luck. So that's the other reason I can think of, that someone pointed out to me that, it might be good to have a backup running just in case. And the next reason, honestly, was just probably my most motivating reason, is I have heard that music actually can get better with two. That has still been really frustrating for me, and I'm going to do that in the next video. We'll talk about it. Music has been really not great through my CI, and that sounds depressing, but it's just the reality. So I've heard for people that when they get two, when they go bilateral, it actually helps some with music. So I don't know. That's my other reason why I'm thinking about doing it. Now, there are some downsides. Honestly, the biggest one I can think of is, you've got the maintenance now of two. So you've got, future surgeries if you need to, have a revision surgery, or, get it replaced, or, upgraded if you need to get the internal implant upgraded or whatever. You've got all those future surgeries. You've got future costs. You've got twice as many batteries now that you got to pay for. And yes, insurance helps with those things in some cases. I mean, it depends on what insurance you have. But there's all the headaches of that. But, honestly, most people, and I say people, I mean, I'm on these, social media websites with communities of people that have CIs and community that are bilateral. And, most people say they wholeheartedly don't regret going bilateral with their CIs. Sure, there's a chance, and I've heard the stories, there's a chance that with the second one, like, it could make vertigo worse. There's always a chance, right, that things could go worse the second time around. I was initially going to do it, I was going to try to do it in March of this year, but I'm honestly thinking about waiting. I've had lots of what I will call medical shenanigans over the past year, and I think my body just needs some time to rest, so I'm thinking about actually pushing it off a little bit longer. But I think I'm going to do it. I really think I'm like 99% sure that I'm going to go ahead and do it. So let me know in the comments, are you facing the same decision? Are you looking at needing a second cochlear implant, or do you even think you want or need one? I don't know. Let me know. Let me know your experience, or if you've already walked this path, let us know how it went for you, maybe what the deciding factors for you were.